Eh, that's just the cafeteria manager. The dismissive words followed Addison Reed everywhere she went at the Central Intelligence Agency's secure facility in Northern Virginia. At 32 years old, with shoulder-length chestnut brown hair usually tied back for kitchen work, warm brown eyes that noticed everything, and hands that could manage food service for 800 intelligence professionals as easily as they could execute close-quarters combat techniques, Addison had spent 3 years being invisible to everyone who mattered. She'd taken the cafeteria manager position after leaving CIA Special Activities Division under circumstances that remained classified, accepting a support role that kept her employed but removed her from field operations that had defined her career. Nobody in the building knew that Addison Reed had been one of the agency's most lethal operatives, with 38 confirmed eliminations across 4 continents, fluent in 7 languages, and combat skills that made Special Forces personnel look like amateurs. When a coordinated assault by 33 foreign intelligence operatives infiltrated the facility during a weekend with skeleton security, intent on stealing classified intelligence and eliminating everyone inside, Addison would discover that some skills never fade. They just wait for the moment when invisible becomes unstoppable, when the cafeteria manager becomes the only thing standing between America's secrets and a catastrophic intelligence breach. Addison Reed had been the cafeteria manager at the CIA's Northern Virginia Analysis Center for 3 years, responsible for food service operations that kept 800 intelligence professionals fed, caffeinated, and focused on protecting national security. Her days started at 0500 hours, preparing breakfast for analysts who'd worked through the night. She managed inventory, supervised a staff of 12 culinary workers, coordinated with vendors who underwent extensive security screening, and somehow maintained food quality standards that made the NVAC cafeteria the envy of other government facilities. But what made Addison exceptional at her job wasn't her culinary expertise or management skills. It was her ability to read people, anticipate needs, and maintain operational awareness that came from years of training most people in the building would never receive. Because Addison Reed hadn't always been a cafeteria manager. 5 years ago, she'd been one of the CIA's most effective operatives in the Special Activities Division, the agency's elite paramilitary arm that conducted covert operations in hostile territories where official American military presence was impossible or politically unacceptable. Addison had been recruited into SAD straight from Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance, where she distinguished herself during combat deployments that tested every aspect of her capabilities. The CIA had seen potential for operations that required someone who could blend into civilian environments, speak multiple languages fluently, and eliminate targets with surgical precision when diplomacy failed. For 4 years, Addison had operated in environments that would have broken most trained operatives. She'd conducted solo infiltration missions in hostile capitals, eliminated high-value targets who threatened American interests, and extracted intelligence that prevented terrorist attacks and foreign espionage operations. Her record was exceptional. 38 confirmed eliminations, 0 mission failures, and 0 compromised covers across operations in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and South America. But field operations took psychological tolls that training couldn't predict. After her last mission, an operation in Syria that had required eliminating an entire cell of foreign intelligence operatives who were torturing captured American personnel, Addison had requested reassignment to support duties. The agency had honored her request, offering her the cafeteria manager position at NVAC. It was a demotion in everything but official paperwork, removing her from operations while keeping her employed and maintaining her security clearances. For 3 years, Addison had accepted the role, finding unexpected satisfaction in feeding people who protected America through intelligence analysis rather than kinetic action. She'd become invisible, just another support staffer managing the mundane logistics that kept the facility running. Nobody knew about her past. Her personnel file was classified at levels that precluded anyone without operational need-to-know from accessing her history. To the analysts, administrators, and security personnel at NVAC, She was simply the competent woman who ensured their meals were ready on time. That invisibility would prove to be America's most valuable asset when everything went catastrophically wrong on a Saturday afternoon in November. NVAC operated with reduced staffing on weekends, approximately 50 personnel maintaining critical analysis that couldn't pause for days off. Addison's cafeteria staff was reduced to just 3 people, herself and 2 assistants who prepared simple meals for the weekend crew. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner service when the first indication of trouble came through her radio earpiece, a device she wore ostensibly for coordinating with her staff, but which also monitored security frequencies from habit she'd never broken. Security breach at entrance checkpoint, multiple hostiles, armed assault, code black. I repeat, code black. The transmission ended abruptly with sounds of gunfire. Addison's combat training activated instantly. Code black meant hostile force penetration, mass casualty situation, all personnel shelter in place. But her operational experience told her that sheltering would be fatal. Whoever was attacking had planned this operation carefully, choosing weekend staffing when defenses were minimal. She moved to the kitchen's security monitor and accessed camera feeds that required manager-level authorization. What she saw confirmed her tactical assessment. Approximately 30 foreign operatives had breached the entrance using sophisticated tactics that indicated extensive planning and intelligence about facility security protocols. They were systematically eliminating security personnel and moving through the building toward the secure areas where classified intelligence systems were located. Their coordination and efficiency indicated professional military or intelligence training. Addison made split-second calculations based on the tactical situation. NVAC's location meant law enforcement backup would take at least 15 minutes to arrive. The facility's security force, designed to prevent unauthorized entry, not repel military assault, had been overwhelmed immediately. The attackers would reach classified systems within 10 minutes and begin killing non-essential personnel within 5. The 50 CIA employees in the building were about to die unless someone with combat capability intervened immediately. She keyed her radio to the emergency channel. All NVAC personnel, this is Cafeteria Manager Reed. Hostile forces have breached facility. Security is compromised. Do not shelter in place. That's a trap. Move to secondary emergency exits immediately. I'm engaging the threat. There was a moment of confused silence before someone responded. Reed, your cafeteria staff. You can't engage armed hostiles. Follow shelter protocols. Negative, I'm former SAD. I know what I'm doing. Evacuate now while I create diversion. She shut off the radio before anyone could question her authority or credentials and began transforming from cafeteria manager to operational asset. The kitchen had tools that civilians saw as cooking equipment, but which Addison's training recognized as improvised weapons. Knives designed for precision cutting that could eliminate human targets, cleaning chemicals that could be weaponized, and industrial equipment that could create tactical advantages. But more importantly, she knew this building better than any attacker. 3 years of managing the cafeteria had given her intimate knowledge of NVAC's layout, including maintenance corridors, ventilation systems, and structural features that didn't appear on official floor plans. Addison grabbed the longest chef's knife from her station, a 12-inch blade she kept razor-sharp for precision work. She took a second knife as backup, secured both to her belt, and began moving through the building using routes that avoided the attacker's primary advance. Her objective was simple: eliminate enough hostiles to allow personnel evacuation and prevent the attackers from reaching classified systems before backup arrived. She moved through a maintenance corridor that ran parallel to the main hallways, using industrial ventilation grates to monitor hostile movement while remaining undetected. Through her observations, she assessed the attack force. Approximately 33 operatives total, armed with suppressed submachine guns and tactical equipment, moving in coordinated teams of 3, executing what appeared to be a Russian Spetsnaz operational doctrine. They were professionals, but they'd made a critical error in their planning. They'd assumed that weekend staffing meant minimal capability to resist, and they'd dismissed support personnel like cafeteria managers as non-threats who could be ignored until later. That assumption was about to cost them. Addison identified her first target, a three-man team that had separated from the main assault force to secure a secondary corridor. They were moving past a utility closet that Addison knew provided perfect ambush positioning. She moved through the ventilation system, dropped silently into the utility closet through an access panel she'd discovered during routine facility maintenance, and waited with the patience that came from dozens of operations where timing meant the difference between success and catastrophic failure. The first operative passed the closet entrance. Addison let him go. Taking the front man would alert the others before she could engage them all. The second operative paused at the closet, checking it mechanically, but not expecting actual threat. Addison exploded from concealment with the speed and precision that had made her legendary and sad. Her knife entered his neck at the precise angle that severed the carotid artery and prevented any sound beyond a brief gasp. He dropped silently, and Addison had already acquired his suppressed MP5 submachine gun before his body hit the floor. The third operative turned toward the sound, or rather the absence of expected sound from his teammate, and Addison put 2 rounds into his head with professional accuracy that came from hundreds of hours of close-quarters combat training. The first operative, realizing his team had been engaged from behind, tried to turn and bring his weapon to bear. Addison shot him twice in the chest and once in the head, the failure drill that ensured target elimination, before he completed his turn. 3 down, 30 hostiles remaining. Addison secured additional weapons and ammunition from the eliminated operatives, now carrying 2 MP5s and multiple magazines. She moved their bodies into the utility closet. No need to alert other attackers that resistance was more capable than expected. She keyed her radio, knowing it was being monitored by both friendly personnel and hostile forces. NVAC personnel, Cafeteria Manager Reed. I've eliminated 3 hostiles in the west corridor. Continue evacuation through secondary exits. Hostile forces are moving toward secure areas. You have approximately 8 minutes to evacuate before they begin systematic building clearance. One of the senior analysts responded, "Reed, who are you?" "Your file says you're cafeteria management. My file is classified above your clearance level. Trust me and evacuate. I'll handle the hostiles." She moved through the ventilation system again, using her knowledge of the building's infrastructure to position herself ahead of the main assault force. Through a ventilation grate, she could see 8 operatives stacked up preparing to breach the secure area where NVAC's classified intelligence systems were housed. They were using professional tactics: explosive breach, flashbang disorientation, overwhelming force. Against normal security, it would be devastatingly effective. But Addison wasn't normal security. She positioned herself above their entry point, waiting until they'd committed to their breach sequence. The moment when all their attention would be focused forward on the door they were about to destroy, and zero attention on the ventilation grate above them. The explosive breaching charge detonated, the door blew inward, and the first 4 operatives moved through the breach with tactical precision. That's when Addison dropped from the ceiling into the middle of the remaining 4 operatives, catching them completely unprepared for attack from above. Her MP5 cracked with suppressed fire, controlled bursts that eliminated threats with minimal ammunition expenditure. The first operative went down with 2 rounds to the head. The second turned toward her and caught a 3-round burst to the chest. The third operative managed to bring his weapon around, but Addison had already transitioned to her knife, driving it into his throat while using his body as cover against the 4th operative's fire. The 4th operative's rounds impacted his dying teammate instead of Addison, and she used the tactical moment to engage him with her backup MP5, eliminating him before he could correct his aim. The 4 operatives inside the secure room heard the gunfire and tried to exit to support their teammates. Addison had positioned herself using their dead colleagues as cover and barricade, creating a fatal funnel where operatives exiting the room were silhouetted against internal lighting while she fired from darkness. She eliminated 2 more as they exited, then deployed a flashbang grenade she'd taken from the dead operatives into the secure room. The disorientation device detonated with overwhelming sensory input, light and sound that destroyed tactical awareness. Addison moved through the entrance immediately, shooting the 2 remaining operatives while they were still recovering from the flashbang's effects. 8 down, 25 remaining. Addison secured the room, verified that classified systems hadn't been compromised, and prepared for the inevitable response from remaining attackers who would have heard the gunfight. She didn't have long to wait. Within 90 seconds, a larger assault force, approximately 10 operatives, was moving toward the secure room with professional caution that indicated they now understood they were facing capable opposition. Addison had prepared for their arrival by positioning explosive charges she'd taken from the dead breach team. She'd also accessed the building's electrical system, knowing that sudden darkness would favor her experience operating in low-light environments over attackers expecting illuminated corridors. When the assault force reached the corridor outside the secure room, Addison cut the lights and detonated the charges. The explosions created chaos, smoke, debris, disorientation, and casualties among operatives who'd been stacked up in tight formation for maximum assault efficiency. Addison moved through the smoke wearing night vision equipment she'd taken from dead operatives, engaging targets who couldn't see her but were clearly visible to her enhanced optics. Her MP5 cracked repeatedly, controlled precision fire that eliminated disoriented hostiles before they could adapt to the changed tactical environment. Within 45 seconds, she'd eliminated 6 more operatives. The remaining 4 had retreated to defensive positions and were attempting to coordinate a response, but their radio communications were now working against them. Addison, monitoring their tactical frequency using captured radio equipment, could hear their confusion and recognition that they were facing someone with professional capabilities that far exceeded their intelligence about facility staffing. Contact has eliminated 15 personnel. 1 operative reported in Russian-accented English. Target demonstrates advanced combat training. Recommend immediate extraction before law enforcement arrives. Their team leader responded, "Negative. Complete the mission. Find and eliminate remaining NVAC personnel. Target is alone, overwhelmed with superior numbers." Addison smiled grimly. They thought she was alone. They hadn't realized she'd been buying time for personnel evacuation. The 50 CIA employees who'd been in the building were now either safely evacuated or secured in hardened safe rooms where attackers couldn't reach them before law enforcement backup arrived. But the hostiles didn't know that yet, which meant they'd continue pushing deeper into the facility rather than extracting immediately. That mistake would be fatal. Addison used her knowledge of the building to position herself along the route the remaining hostiles would have to use to reach areas where they believed personnel were sheltering. She set up ambush positions using captured weapons, improvised explosives, and environmental hazards that turned familiar corridors into lethal kill zones. The hostiles came in smaller teams now, having learned that large groups were vulnerable to the area effect weapons she'd been deploying. But smaller teams meant she could engage them sequentially rather than simultaneously, eliminating threats through tactical patience rather than overwhelming firepower. She eliminated 2 more operatives who'd been sent to flank her last known position. They'd moved professionally, but she'd anticipated their tactical thinking and positioned herself behind them rather than where they expected. Another 3 went down when they triggered a claymore mine she'd positioned using directional orientation to maximize coverage while avoiding structural damage that could harm remaining personnel. The assault force was now down to approximately 15 operatives, half their original strength, and their radio communications indicated growing concern about mission viability. Target has eliminated 18 personnel. Recommend abort mission and extract immediately. Negative. We have intelligence indicating high-value targets remain in building. Find them, kill them, complete the mission. But there were no high-value targets remaining in accessible areas. Addison had ensured evacuation or secured protection for all personnel. The hostiles were now fighting for an objective that no longer existed, while law enforcement backup was approximately 5 minutes away. She monitored their communications, waiting for them to commit to final tactical decisions that would determine how the engagement concluded. They split into 3 teams, 5 operatives continuing toward secure areas, 5 establishing defensive positions to hold their entry point for extraction, and 5 conducting systematic clearing of the building to find personnel they believed were still hiding. Addison prioritized the team moving toward secure areas. They remained closest to classified intelligence that was the operation's primary objective. She positioned herself in a corridor they would have to transit, using industrial kitchen equipment she'd moved into tactical positions to create cover and concealment. When they entered the corridor, moving in tight formation with professional discipline, Addison engaged them using a captured PKM machine gun she'd taken from one of the dead operatives. The sustained automatic fire devastated their formation. The narrow corridor prevented effective dispersion, and her elevated position provided optimal firing angles. Within 8 seconds, she'd eliminated all 5 operatives using a weapon system designed for exactly this kind of suppressive engagement. 10 remaining. The defensive team at the entry point heard the gunfire and recognized that their mission was failing catastrophically. They began calling for immediate extraction, but Addison had already moved to cut off their withdrawal route. She used incendiary devices to create fire barriers that forced them to choose between burning positions and evacuation routes she could cover with direct fire. When they moved toward the extraction route, she engaged them with precision shooting that eliminated 3 more before they could reorganize. 7 remaining. The final team, conducting building clearance, realized their situation had become untenable. They attempted to reach their extraction point through alternate routes, but Addison had spent 3 years learning every corridor, stairwell, and maintenance access in the building. She ambushed them, using a combination of direct fire and improvised explosive devices, eliminating 4 more before the final 3 managed to reach the main entrance. Those last 3 operatives burst through the entrance doors just as FBI hostage rescue team vehicles arrived at the facility. Caught between Addison inside the building and federal agents outside, they attempted to surrender. The FBI team, not knowing the building's internal situation, secured the 3 surviving attackers while tactical teams prepared to enter and clear the facility. That's when Addison keyed her radio on FBI tactical frequency. FBI Tactical, this is CIA Special Activities Division Officer Addison Reed. I'm exiting the building through main entrance with captured weapons. Facility is secure. 30 hostile operatives eliminated, 3 captured by your teams. All CIA personnel evacuated or secured. Building is clear for your entry. There was a moment of confused silence before the FBI tactical commander responded. Say again. You eliminated 30 hostile operatives. Affirmative. I'm exiting now. Don't shoot me. I'm the good guy. Addison walked out of the building carrying multiple weapons, covered in other people's blood, with an expression of professional calm that came from extensive combat experience. The FBI tactical commander stared at her in disbelief. You're the CIA officer who eliminated 30 trained operatives? Actually, I'm the cafeteria manager who eliminated 30 trained operatives. The CIA officer part is classified. Behind her, the NVAC building showed evidence of intense combat, bullet impacts, explosive damage, fire suppression foam, and the kind of tactical chaos that came from sustained close-quarters battle. Inside, FBI teams would find 30 dead foreign intelligence operatives, sophisticated assault equipment, and evidence of an operation that had been planned to steal American intelligence and eliminate everyone in the facility. They would also find that every CIA employee had evacuated safely, that classified systems remained secured and uncompromised, and that the facility's cafeteria manager had single-handedly prevented catastrophic intelligence breach through combat skills that most special operations personnel would find intimidating. Director Sarah Chen of the CIA's Counterintelligence Division arrived at NVAC 3 hours later, after FBI teams had secured the facility and begun processing evidence. She found Addison sitting in the cafeteria, the one room that had remained untouched by combat, drinking coffee and reviewing the dinner menu she'd been preparing when the attack began. Reed, Chen said quietly, I need to understand what happened here. Your current assignment is cafeteria manager. Your file indicates you requested removal from operational duties 3 years ago. Yet you just eliminated 30 trained operatives in sustained close-quarters combat that special operations teams would consider extraordinarily difficult. Addison looked up from her menu planning. Director Chen, someone had to. The alternative was losing 50 CIA personnel and suffering catastrophic intelligence compromise. I used available capabilities to prevent that outcome. Available capabilities, Chen repeated. Reed, you displayed combat proficiency that exceeds most special operations personnel. You made tactical decisions that saved lives and protected critical intelligence. You conducted a solo defensive action that will be studied in tactical training programs. Those aren't available capabilities. Those are elite operational skills. Ma'am, I was SAD for 4 years before requesting reassignment. Those skills don't disappear just because I started managing food service instead of conducting field operations. Chen sat down across from her. Why did you request reassignment 3 years ago? Your operational record was exceptional. You could have advanced to senior positions within SAD. Addison was quiet for a long moment before responding. Ma'am, I eliminated 38 targets during 4 years of operations. Everyone was justified, necessary, and authorized. But it took a psychological toll I couldn't sustain indefinitely. I needed to do something that built rather than destroyed, that created rather than eliminated. Managing the cafeteria gave me that. I fed people who protected America through intelligence rather than violence. And today? Today was different. Today was defense rather than offense. Today was protecting my people from an active threat rather than conducting offensive operations in foreign territory. That's something I can do without the psychological burden that made me leave operational duties. Chen studied her thoughtfully. Reed, the agency needs people with your capabilities. What happened today demonstrates that your skills are too valuable to limit to food service management. Ma'am, with respect, what happened today demonstrates that having operational personnel in support roles creates organizational redundancy. When the expected defenses failed, there was someone with unexpected capabilities who could respond. That redundancy saved lives. Chen smiled slightly. So you're arguing that the cafeteria manager should remain the cafeteria manager because she's a hidden operational asset? I'm arguing that sometimes the most valuable people are the ones nobody expects to be dangerous. The attackers today dismissed support personnel as non-threats. That assumption allowed me to operate with tactical surprise that more obvious security forces wouldn't have had. Reed, I'm going to make you an offer. I want you to continue managing the cafeteria, but also serve as NVAC's Emergency Response Coordinator. Official cover remains support duties, but you'll have authority to assume tactical command during security emergencies. Your SAD background gets officially acknowledged to senior staff who need to know, but remains classified from general personnel. You stay invisible until you're needed. Addison considered the proposal. It offered compromise between the operational capabilities she possessed and the support role that had given her psychological respite from constant combat operations. I accept, ma'am. On one condition, I want to train selected support personnel in basic defensive tactics, not to make them operators, but to give them capability to respond to threats rather than becoming victims. What happened today worked because I had combat training. But it shouldn't require former SAD personnel to defend CIA facilities. Regular staff should have basic capabilities. Chen nodded approval. Agreed. Develop a training program. We'll implement it across all CIA facilities. Maybe the next time someone attacks a CIA building, they'll discover that the janitor's former Delta Force and the IT specialist is former SEAL Team 6. 3 weeks later, Addison Reed was back to managing NVAC's cafeteria, preparing meals for intelligence professionals who now viewed her with a mixture of respect and mild fear. The story of the cafeteria manager who'd eliminated 30 trained operatives had spread through the intelligence community, becoming the kind of legend that operational personnel told each other during training. But for Addison, the most satisfying part wasn't the legend or the recognition. It was the analyst who approached her during lunch service to say, "Thank you for saving our lives. That chicken is also outstanding, by the way." She'd found her purpose, feeding people who protected America while maintaining capabilities to protect them when feeding wasn't enough. Sometimes the most dangerous person in any building is the one everyone overlooks, and sometimes the cafeteria manager is exactly who you need when 33 trained operatives decide they're going to steal American intelligence and kill everyone in the building. The cultural impact of Addison's defensive action rippled through the intelligence community in ways that transformed how agencies viewed support personnel capabilities and operational security. Within 6 months of the NVAC incident, the CIA had implemented comprehensive defensive training programs for all support staff across every facility. Janitors learned basic threat recognition and response protocols. Administrative assistants received training in secure communications during emergencies. Cafeteria workers, Addison's former peers, completed courses in defensive tactics and facility security. The program became known informally as Reed Protocol, the recognition that support personnel represented untapped defensive capability if properly trained and empowered to respond during crises. Director Chen spoke about it during congressional testimony on intelligence facility security. The NVAC attack succeeded in breaching our perimeter precisely because adversaries assumed support personnel represented no threat. Officer Reed demonstrated that assumption was catastrophically wrong. We're ensuring that future attackers face that same miscalculation at every CIA facility. But perhaps more significant was how Addison's story changed perceptions about career transitions within the intelligence community. The idea that operational personnel could move to support roles without losing value, that combat-tested officers could contribute through positions that appeared mundane but provided critical capabilities, became accepted rather than stigmatized. Former special operations personnel began accepting support positions across the intelligence community, creating layers of hidden capability that adversaries couldn't identify or predict. The janitor at Langley might be former Marine reconnaissance. The IT specialist at the National Security Agency might be former Army Special Forces. The facilities manager might be former Navy SEAL. Addison's defensive coordinator role evolved into a broader program training and positioning former operational personnel throughout CIA support infrastructure. They maintained their cover positions, cooking meals, managing facilities, providing administrative support, while serving as distributed defensive assets. 3 years after the NVAC incident, when another foreign intelligence service attempted infiltration of a CIA facility in Texas, they encountered a custodial staff that included 2 former Delta Force operators and a former CIA Ground Branch paramilitary officer. The attack was stopped within 6 minutes with 0 American casualties. The lesson had been learned. Never assume the support staff is just support staff. Never dismiss the cafeteria manager as non-threatening. Never underestimate the invisible people who keep organizations running. Because sometimes those invisible people are former elite operatives waiting for the moment when feeding people isn't enough. When protecting them requires capabilities that most organizations never knew they possessed until the moment everything depended on the person everyone had overlooked. Addison Reed continued managing the NVAC cafeteria, training the next generation of disguised defenders and proving that the most valuable personnel are often those whose true capabilities remain hidden until crisis reveals what was always there beneath the surface. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.